Welcome to the Liberty Bell. We are exploring the moral foundations of freedom, and we are seeking what's right with all of our heart, soul, and might. I'm James.
And I'm Joshua, and today we're talking about the lack of understanding in the area of history in our nation, and what we're seeing from different groups, different people, not understanding. They're wanting to follow along pathways and mindsets that haven't ever worked properly. And we want to talk about that a little bit today and just kind of see where it goes from there.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So first off, this week had a really good church service this morning, James.
Oh, good.
It was really good. And I want to read a little bit of scripture.
Please do.
From what I read this morning in my message. And so we were looking in Isaiah, and we know that, like, biblically, once we get into the end times, that, you know, of course, Christ is going to return and, like, rain judgment upon the earth. Thankfully, the church, Christian people we don't have to be a part of that. We're actually caught up, taken off the earth to be with the Lord, and He comes and just rains judgment on the world. In Isaiah 13, we actually find that prophesied. And so it says, verse number 1 of Isaiah 13 says, the burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did see, lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of battle. And so as I was thinking about that, I was thinking all the technology. I mean, our country, we have the greatest military on the earth, the greatest military might. We've been able to win wars with literally school kids. You just put a gun in their hand and give them a mission, and they can do it. But what we do see is that God's weaponry is greater than anything a man can create. And when He says that they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of His indignation to destroy the whole land. He's so much powerful than what man can do. And what man can create all the weapons. Matter of fact, what you'll find in Revelation is that Satan and the false prophet will gather together and actually build their own, have their own army to fight against God. And the armies of the world, all the power, all the people that Satan can get together can't defeat God. And so it's amazing to understand that, you know, when we're going through these difficult times, we're stressed out about life, we're stressed out about what we're seeing in our country, understanding that God's power exceeds anything we can imagine. It can exceed any power that can be established on the earth, anything anyone can do to you or I. Someone could literally take our lives, but yet their power that they feel on this earth, it's only earthly. It's not eternal.
Yeah.
And so it goes on, and it says, verse number 6, it says, Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. And so, like, there's this, when the world is literally coming to an end, when they see because people that are not Christian people will realize that, man, God's right. God's real. God's the true king. But it'll be too late. Their opportunity is gone.
Yep.
And they'll melt. Their hearts will melt. They'll literally realize, and what a sad day that is, that so many people causing this division, hurting people, gaining this power that's only on this earth.
Yep.
It doesn't last. And there's coming a day when God's going to get his vengeance, and it's going to be a sad day for him.
Well, let me ask you something. Do you think that is happening right now, though, that people are waking up that up to now have not really thought deeply about these spiritual issues? Like, do you think that everything's happening is causing people to kind of to take it seriously and to kind of wake up? Because it definitely has for me. I mean, for me personally, everything that's been going on has definitely deepened my own spiritual journey and made it just brought out how important that is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can't hide from it anymore. And it's just becoming clearer by the day. I feel like that what's happening right now is not this political party versus that political party. It's not this economic group versus that economic group. It's not it's literally a spiritual warfare that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And it becomes more and more clear that this doesn't have to do with like the Republican Party or this race or that race or this poor people or that rich people. It's like literally it's good versus evil is like coming to the forefront. Do you think people are starting to see that?
I think that so I believe that Christian people are being solidified. Their faith is being solidified. For me, it has been, holy cow, like the Bible is so true. It's so real. God's word has been literally illuminated to me. But for people who have been deceived by Satan, I think it's solidifying their deceit.
Oh yeah.
It's solidifying their belief in their cause. And that opens the door for the end times, for the Antichrist to come in and promise all these things and create this one world mindset with the false prophet in hand. So I believe it's working for the good of the church, where Christian people are like, you know what, I can literally feel the return of Christ. It's so imminent. But then at the same time, for people that don't believe, that don't care, that are being deceived by Satan, I think it's solidifying for them where they're going to stand.
Yeah.
So it's working in a good way for church people, because like you, I mean, I was getting a little stagnant in I'm not saying you were, but I'm just saying like you, I've been more active spiritually recently.
Yeah.
I was getting a little stagnant in my relationship, and when this stuff starts happening, I'm like, man, this is the time to really lean on the Lord.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, I think a lot of people this is a time where they're solidifying where they're going to stand for eternity.
Right.
They're choosing literally an eternal damnation.
Do you feel like for most people, the decision has been made, and it's just people are just intensifying one way or the other?
I think so. I mean, I think that we're finding this very strong parallel. Now, that's not to say that people can't come to knowledge of Christ. I mean, because they can. I mean, we know that in these types of times, because what you'll see happen is you'll see a lot of these leaders that are, I mean, this is cult mindset and a lot of this stuff. And when I'm talking about, I know we say these people a lot, but what I'm talking about is this Black Lives Matter, the far left movements, even some of the far right movements. But you see these movements of people, these militia groups, and you see all these polarizing groups coming out and making these stands. They're almost cult mindset.
Yeah.
And what you find in a lot of the cult mindsets is you find that the leaders are always dedicated to that cause because they can benefit from it.
Oh yeah.
But people who are abused by it, because you start out in this relationship with the stuff with Black Lives Matter or whoever else. Like, for instance, Black Lives Matter. People that are subscribing to that, once the election's over in November, it'll die back down, depending on
you think
how that
so?
turns out. I mean, I
don't know.
I think. Well, okay. So let me step back then. I think typically it would die back down. I actually am not convinced that it would this time.
Yep.
But I think what will happen is, considering either way we go, we'll see some sort of shift, some sort of change. And what we're seeing right now is all this craze and all this craziness in anticipation of the election. I believe that's the root of a lot of this. Is like,
it is very reminiscent of 2016.
They hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so what you saw after 2016 election, Donald Trump goes into office. Everybody goes crazy, similar to what they're doing right now, just not for as long. Everybody goes crazy for a little while, and then it dies down. So that's my mindset. Is like these people are going to be burnt when the election's over, because even though the Black Lives Matter movement is still going to be this huge push, they're not going to be as powerful as they are right now if Donald Trump goes back in office.
Well, maybe like the actual group Black Lives Matter might not be, but the mentality, the Marxist kind of atheist, satanic, whatever you want to call it, mentality that's in the colleges, that's all over the place. That, I mean, because when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, all during that year, you saw craziness in the streets. You saw protests. You saw all this kind of crazy stuff going on. But yeah, once he was elected, after a week or so of insanity, like, yeah, things kind of quieted down, but the mentality didn't go away. The mindset didn't go away. It deepened. You know, I was in the university after that in 2017, 2018, 2019. I was in the university, and I saw firsthand those people doubled down. You know, like there was no, oh well, maybe we should listen to what, these Republicans have to say. They won this election. Maybe there's something we don't understand. There was none of that. It
No,
was like
oh, no.
a doubling down. And so certainly, yeah, if Trump was to be reelected, you might not see Black Lives Matter marching in the street like you are now and burning cities down, but like the mentality's not going anywhere. And this is something that I think about when Donald Trump had his speech at Mount Rushmore. I thought this is essentially a declaration of war. Basically, I mean, he's basically calling out this faction of the country and saying, like, these people are trying to destroy us, and they must be stopped. And he didn't say, like, oh, we've got to go destroy these people, but essentially the way he was putting the scenario painted it in terms of a war. And I do think that Michael Knowles said this on his show last week, that we find ourselves in a situation where there's these two competing systems. There's these two competing worldviews. The Christian, American, patriotic Constitution worldview and the Marxist, atheist worldview. One of those two things has got to go.
Yeah.
Like one of those two systems will be destroyed. Clearly, the Marxists are trying to dismantle the American system. But one way or another, like that mentality and that system, that also, like these two things can't exist side by side. Clearly,
Right.
that's no longer an option. One way or another, we are in and I don't mean war in terms of like we're all shooting each other yet.
Yeah.
But there is a war, like a spiritual line has been drawn in the sand.
Yeah.
And it is like, you got to pick a side, and one way or another, one of these two things is going to be destroyed.
Yeah. So my reason for believing that Black Lives Matter will be the organization will kind of fade away after the election is regardless if Donald Trump goes back in office, if you go to, and this has been proven by all the other podcasters and video people and whoever else is out there doing stuff, if you go to Black Lives Matter website and donate and click donate now, it will take you to Act Blue, the Act Blue link. Have you seen that?
No. What's that?
So if you visit, I'm going to pull it up right now. So if you
Okay.
go to blacklivesmatter.com, I hate to even pull that website. Not that I don't love black people, but that message you shared with me was so important because, the premises of the word matter, understanding that what the Bible says about people mattering.
Oh, yeah.
How that, and you think John 3:16. Everybody knows John 3:16.
Yeah.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, for everyone, not just for one group of people or one section or one race or one creed or what, because we're all created in his image.
Yeah.
And it stems from years and years of different geographical locations where you live, whatever that have changed pigmentation and changed certain things. And our bodies do adapt to what circumstance we live in. I mean, some people are fairer skinned, some people are darker skinned, but we're all we come from the same place.
Yeah.
And we're all a focus of the ministry of Christ.
Right.
He doesn't care what color we are.
Well, and also Josh is talking about this thing I sent him from Apologia Studios,
Sorry,
which
I
is a
didn't.
YouTube channel.
I'm like, all
But
these
he-
people know.
But he this guy was preaching about this. He was basically saying, he made a good point, which is that from a Marxist atheistic worldview, you can't invoke the word matters. I mean, nothing matters, right? There's no mattering in that worldview. Everything is flat. There's in a materialist, Marxist, atheist world, nobody matters. That's just it doesn't mean anything. The only thing that matters is power. Now, but in the Christian worldview, which is on the other side of this thing, everybody matters because you matter to God. And there's an order to the world, there's a sense to the world, and there's a love at the heart of everything that makes everybody's life matter.
Right.
But without that, you can't even say Black Lives Matter or White Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. Yet nothing matters. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it comes back to that and I said this in my message this morning. You've got Christianity, which has always said, true Christianity. I don't care what color you are. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care where you come from.
Right.
It doesn't matter. If you are a Christian, if you are a fellow brother or sister in Christ, we're bonded together by our relationship, by our identity on the inside.
Right.
Not because you're black and I'm white or whatever it may be. We're bonded together by the identity on the inside because that's what's eternal.
Right.
I can't tell you if we keep our skin tone in heaven. I don't know. But I do know what the Bible says in that in our death, we're given a new body to spend eternity in heaven with Christ. And it's a perfect body.
Yeah.
And so it may not have it probably doesn't have any kind of racial
Well, mine's
form
white. Mine's going to be white.
Okay.
Okay. Like blaring white.
White angels matter.
Yeah.
Right. So, but we're not like, I don't care what I look like in heaven because
Right.
it's not going to matter at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I'm also not going to care about I've heard people say, well, especially growing up in the Baptist church and, I'm in that old fashioned, Baptist church. That's the only way I'd like to have it. But I've always heard a lot of these old fashioned Christian people say, well, you're not going to like it in heaven if you don't start getting along with people. Your mind won't even allow you to not like something in heaven. Heaven is literally everything human about us.
We're all going to be too busy staring at God.
Take it right.
Yeah.
I mean, everything human about us is stripped away.
Yeah.
The thought that you could like something or not like something or
Right.
dislike
Yeah,
someone, that's gone.
Right.
And so understanding on this earth, why are we pushing this stuff on this earth to try to make things better here? Because we really can't. And so these movements, and that's what we're going to get into in just a second. We veered off of our our thought topic, and that's okay.
No, it's fine.
But
it's fine.
that's what we're going to get to in a few seconds. Is like how these movements, all they are is a distraction from God's purpose.
Yeah.
And so, if you go to blacklivesmatter.com, they will tell you what matters. They have a link to it if you click what matters. But you go over here and you click donate. Now, this takes you to actblue.com. All right.
Okay.
So you're on actblue.com, and let me go over here where I can pull up ActBlue. It's like a charity. It's a charity group. And so if you read the explanation of ActBlue, listen to this.
Okay.
You just saw, it took me, did you see up there in the
Yeah,
little
I
bar?
saw,
It says
I saw.
Okay.
Yep.
So it says ActBlue is a nonprofit technology organization established in June 2004 that enables left-leaning nonprofits, Democrats, and progressive groups to raise money on the internet by providing them with online fundraising software. Now, it does say that ActBlue does not endorse individual candidates. The organization is open to Democratic campaigns, candidates, committees, and progressive organizations. So, but what it essentially is, here's the thing: they take a 3.95% credit card processing fee every time somebody makes a donation, and it has its own separate fundraising program that I believe probably does eventually go to Democratic candidates, and like, for example, in 2017, it raised, it was a way of raising $45 million for Beto O'Rourke's campaign against Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
So you can't, they say, well, this is not for an individual candidate. No, but it is a platform for Democrats to get money. And so that's my thing, is like, it goes back to this issue of, it's not liberals, left-leaning people. A lot of them are desiring this racial tension, this racial divide, because they want to get people fired up, because they know they put a former first lady, a former secretary of state against a guy that's never been in politics, and they lost their tail in 2016. And they're trying everything that they can do to try to beat that. And so why is ActBlue even involved in Black Lives Matter? Why is a Democratic organization, Why is any political affiliated organization involved with a group like this if this group's sole purpose is trying to stop systemic racism? It doesn't make sense to me. And so this segues into what we're talking about history, not understanding history. People are puppets for politicians. It's the 3 P's of life we all need to understand. People, puppets, politicians. That's what politicians want, is for people to be puppets. Right. They want to be able to control people. And and I hate to tell it to anybody, and it probably offends people, but a lot of liberal politicians don't care one bit about black communities, black people, racism. They don't care about it.
No.
It's just because it's just the way that they could hopefully get in there and beat Donald Trump.
Well, because they know that, I mean, it's pretty clear that Democrats can't win elections without that, whatever it is, 98% block of black voters. That's just kind of guaranteed for them, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, just statistically, if you take that away, it becomes very hard for Democrats to win elections. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, of course, they're in a position where they think that they have to do whatever they can do to pander to the black community in order to hold on to that block.
Yeah.
But not because they care about black people, but because they just need them to show up to the polls. So whatever we need to tell them, whatever we need to give them, however we need to pander to them, that's what we got to do.
Well, and you get Joe Biden in office, and then that's what I'm saying about Black Lives Matter, the organization. We'll stop hearing from them if Joe Biden goes into office, because they're just trying to get a vote. They don't care about these communities.
Yeah.
What have they done to? I mean, what has he done to do that? If he cared about it, he would have been talking about it prior to George Floyd.
Yeah.
But prior to this stuff, if he cared about that stuff, I mean, Donald Trump, I mean, he's been talking about trying to get jobs into black communities and Hispanic communities, into low and the minority communities. He's been talking that too. And done that since he was started his campaign.
Yeah.
And so that's what is frustrating to me, is that these people don't understand and look at what you find in a lot of the Democratic,
right,
campaign ideas are, we're going to get the young vote. We want to get the young vote. They want to combine all the minorities together and create a majority out of the minorities. But what they do is they have to find this polarizing issue in each of the minorities. Take the black community, police brutality. If we can talk about police brutality and say we're going to try to fix it, they'll vote for us.
Yeah.
Hispanic communities, talk about illegal immigration and how we're going to loosen up on immigration. And Donald Trump doesn't want you to live in this country. A lot of my Hispanic friends love Donald Trump because they came here and they made a life and they worked hard to become citizens. All these communities, what are they going to do for the Asian community? I mean, what are they going to do for the
Asians? Don't need any help.
No, I mean,
they don't.
I mean, but you know what I mean? Like, if we're going to be fair, if we want equality, what are we doing for the Asian community? What are we doing for the Native American community? Yeah. I mean, if this is like a competition, Native Americans have been treated worse than almost any race living on our continent.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not that type of conversation. And if you get the Democratic mindset to take care of the Native Americans, has ruined many Native American cultures. And so this reparation mindset, it's going to do the same thing for African American
Well, it already
culture.
has. It's the same thing that happened in the 60s with the Lyndon B. Johnson, War on Poverty, what is it, the Great Society, all that kind of crap. I mean, it's already destroyed the black community.
Right.
Clearly, just statistically, you look at divorce rates, single parenthood rates, crime rates, all these things just skyrocketed in the wake of those policies. And that's it. Reparations is just a continuation of the same idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, do you think that Democratic Party, does it still? I'm getting tongue-tied here. So there's this distinction between like the Democratic Party, maybe like the mainstream old school Democrats, and then the like far left, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, all those people. Mm-hmm. But do you think that the like mainstream Democratic Party is even really a thing? And can it even exist anymore? I think it's gotten to a point where they've so caved to the radical left
Yeah.
continually, and given into its premises, and they're now just getting eaten.
Yeah.
Because like you can't
Right.
keep just pandering and granting their premises. It's just like, for a long time, for like 50 years, the mainstream Democrats have gotten away with this thing where a trick they picked up from the far left was like, oh, if you're arguing with a Republican, just call them a racist, and then you'll win.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. So they've been using that tactic.
It's like armor piercing rounds right there.
Right. But once you give into that premise, now the radical left, they can just call the Democrats racist, and they have to say, oh, you're right, I'm sorry, because they've already adopted the premises in order to win arguments.
Yeah.
Now the far left is just eating.
It's getting confusing. There are too many directions.
But I'm saying like that radical left, that's all there is now.
I agree.
It's
Well, yeah.
it's eating the mainstream, and Joe Biden is like the perfect example of that, because he's like the last remaining quote unquote moderate old school Democrat, but he's just like an empty
And
shell.
I don't consider him an old school Democrat. I consider him like a...
But I mean, compared to Rashida Tlaib, compared
Well, yeah,
to
now
Ilhan Omar, that's what
like
I mean.
Traitor level there.
But even so, like he's not. He's just an empty shell.
Oh,
at this
no,
point.
yeah.
He's like The Walking Dead, and he's
bad.
just
It's
there
bad.
holding on to power for all these other radical voices who have they've taken, the elves have taken over the workshop at this point, is what I'm saying. There is no more mainstream Democrat, and whatever there is left of it, of like just liberal people, they're all going to get eaten by this thing.
Well, so my thought on that is what we know, the old Democrat Party we know, lives and dies with Pelosi. What's his name? You just said Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Yeah. It lives and dies with those people.
Yeah.
Because they were the old school Democrats.
Yeah.
That morphed into, I think when you have Bill Clinton come through, and you have all the controversy with Clinton, and then you go into the 9/11 days, those very polarizing. With it really separated and divided the parties.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to see the Islam influence across the world. You see in our nation, it becomes so prevalent. And you've got the refugee movements, you've got the war on terror, you've got the invasion of Afghanistan, Iraq, that all that going on. And you start to see this, everybody's on the same page for a little while. And then you come on into the Obama days, and we were still like, Republicans and Democrats could agree on one thing. We want Osama bin Laden. We want to literally rain terror on Iraq and Afghanistan. We there was like this whole, like, I mean, I hate to say it, and I don't mean it bad, but like, I mean, my great grandfather grew up, and the enemy was the Nazis, Japanese. My dad's generation, it was always Vietnam conversation. That was kind of the enemies, was the Vietnamese. And then our generation grew up with, radical Islam as the enemy. So we've always had this enemy to point to of each generation. And Obama comes in office, and while I think he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, he made himself seem very moderate. And there were things he did and said that I was like, all right, I don't completely disagree with that. He kept the military active. He was in office when we actually got bin Laden. I mean, like, he wasn't the reason we got bin Laden, but he was supportive of the mission. Yeah. I mean, like, there's things, like, he was still, like, trying to continue that war on terror.
Well, at the very least, too, like, fundamentally, he seemed like pro-American,
right?
Which is like
exactly
the old school liberal thing is like, okay, we need to fix our problems, but within the framework of the Constitution, and within the framework of the American system.
Yeah. So you see it come on, and the shift we see today is like, I don't like Obama, I don't like Barack Obama, but the thing is, I feel like the things he did in office were, aside from Obamacare, the things he did in office, you could see like, okay, I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
He just lives, I mean, he lives in this ivory tower and thinks that everything he's doing is going to work.
Right.
We don't have that anymore. These people are very, so I feel like that really, to me, that mainstream Democrat left with Obama.
Oh, yeah.
Hillary Clinton was the first. I mean, because I just get the heebie-jeebies listening to that woman talk. So like that radical left, I think it starts with her. Because you see, she knew the tactics were going to have to be the young people. She knew it was going to have to be the LGBTQ, LMCP, SMG vote, and she knew it needed to be the black vote. She knew it needed to be all these minority votes that she could throw together.
Yeah.
And then what do you see come out of that? The squad comes out of it.
Yeah.
Tlaib, these super dangerous people don't realize how dangerous Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar, what's the other one? The girl from
Ayanna
Atlanta.
Presley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These people are dangerous because they're not Democrats. They're not even, I don't consider them Democrat at all. I think they are a whole new party, and they are pulling the strings with Biden.
100%. And you see this even with Nancy Pelosi. Like when AOC first came in, there was I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember Nancy Pelosi rebuking her about something. Mm-hmm. AOC was going on about something, and Nancy Pelosi was like, look, you need to cool it. You know, like, you're getting way out of bounds here. Like, you need to show some humility.
The one time I can agree with Nancy Pelosi.
You know, she was like, you're getting, like, you're trying to go way too radical, way too fast. You need to realize that it doesn't work that way, and we have to work with each other and come to compromises, and there's, like, a whole political process behind this. That was, like, what, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. Now look at Nancy Pelosi. She's fully on board with these people.
That proves what their motivation is. It's staying in office rather than standing down on, standing on what they...
Well, Nancy Pelosi is recognized, or not, I don't know if consciously or unconsciously, but she's recognized that there is no... There's no center to hold to anymore. You got to just go all the way left, because those are the people that have all the motivation. They have all the whatever. They have all the fire.
That's what brings up the alarm for another civil war in our country. And we've talked about this. I think we've talked about it enough where we can hit some highlights in our show. But people would probably think we're crazy when we talk about this. But there was only one other time in or two other times in our nation's history where you had to either go all one way or all the other way.
Yeah.
And you see the American Revolution, the first revolution. You see you either had to be all the way patriot or all the way, with colonialism and the English. You had to choose one of those sides. And you just had to accept what side you were going to stand on.
Yeah.
So you take the Civil War days, and while, you take Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, a lot of these people, the mainstream leaders of these groups, they had slaves, or their family had slaves, but they didn't necessarily agree with slavery, or maybe they were starting to come to that realization. Maybe slavery is not good.
Yeah.
They weren't seeing the same need for it. And so they were like, slavery is not, I don't really necessarily agree with slavery, but you're also trying to invade my state. So Robert E. Lee turns down the leadership of, the U.S. Army, and I got to stand with Virginia. Yeah. So you had to choose. I'm going to fight for the South, and they didn't know this, but forever be regarded as a racist.
Right.
So I'm going to fight for the South, and I'm going to accept everything. Like, unfortunately, I may not agree with slavery, but I'm going to fight for the South to preserve my home. Unfortunately, there's some bad parts that comes with that.
Yeah.
Now, there are things I would contest because although I have my opinions about the Civil War, I didn't live it. But you can see good things from the North, and you can see good ideas from the South.
Yeah.
But they were forced to choose. You accept everything with one side and everything with the other.
And that's what I thought about Donald Trump's Mount Rushmore speech. I'm like, he's making it clear. If you're listening to what he's really saying, it is becoming clear that we are coming to that point.
Yeah.
Where, like, you have to you might agree with some liberal points, or you might disagree with some things about Donald Trump, or you might, up until now, you've been able to kind of pick and choose those things because there's still discourse. There's still like, well, I lean left, but I like this about conservatism, or like, oh, well, I support Donald Trump, but I agree that we need police reform in this way that, but we're coming to a point where you're going to have to take the good with the bad, and you're going to have to stand on one side or the other. And it's basically, it's like constitutional Christian America, or it's a kind of Marxist overthrow of the entire system.
Yeah.
Like that's all there is.
Yeah.
Those are the two choices, and you're going to have to get on board with one or the other.
Right. Well, and so that's the thing, is when you force people to take everything in its whole, in its entirety.
Yeah, right.
So that's what it does, is you take, all right, I want to see a patriot government that's, we're going to govern ourselves. It's revolutionary era. You choose the entirety of that, and you bring on whatever that entails. You bring on whatever that is, good and bad. Right. Or I'm going to stick with England. I don't know who would choose to do that, but people did. And you take the entirety of that. You take the entirety of this home you built, and when the war's done, you go back to where,
right.
Where you started. The Civil War, had the South won, who knows what our nation would look like. I don't believe it was part of God's will for that to happen, for the South to win, because it didn't. But how different would our nation look if that were to happen? But when you had people that had to choose, all right, I'm going to go to this side and I'm going to go to this side. The area we live in North Carolina was very divided, because people were just extremely divided on it. And it wasn't even necessarily the issue of slavery. It was just, a lot of it was the patriotism. I'll be honest, there wasn't anybody in North or South that really cared about slaves. They didn't. Abraham Lincoln, he didn't care about slaves. He just used that as a political tool near the end of the war. It wasn't about slavery. It was about these polarizing issues, and there were half the people that chose to stand on this side, half the people that choose to stand on that side, and what that ends up doing is it causes war, and that's what we're seeing right now. Yeah. You've got NFAC. That's what we want to talk about. I'm not going to tell you what the name means. You can look it up. It's extremely vulgar. I think that just shows how unprofessional this group is and why I don't take them seriously. But it's also concerning because of how you get 200 people with guns. Half of them, 3/4 of them probably can't shoot worth anything. But you get enough lead flying at you, it can hurt you. Tell us about what happened.
Well, I mean, you get okay. Well, let's back up. NFAC is the not effing around coalition, and this started. I mean, I don't know when it started, but it kind of came to light on July 4th weekend, and I just saw it on a Facebook page, and I just saw this cell phone video from Stone Mountain in Georgia, which I've been to many times. I'm from Georgia. I know Stone Mountain well. But there were there's this column of hundreds. I don't know how many hundred.
I think it was estimated 200.
200?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. Of guys, all black. I think maybe two white people in a crowd of all black people.
You can definitely tell who they were.
Yeah, for sure. They stood out. Dressed in all black, just combated up.
Which is not a good tactical color, by the way, but anyway.
Body armored up, most of them with ARs, and I mean just geared up. I mean, loaded up, armed.
It didn't look like a peaceful protest.
No, I mean, this is like an army. This is what you're looking at. But you look at them closely, and it's like, these people are not trained soldiers.
They had their fingers on their triggers.
Yeah, they were.
Their gun pointed at their.
These are people with minimal or no training.
Yeah.
Marching the streets in Georgia. I mean, heavily armed. Heavily armed. And so then I saw a bunch of clips of the leader of the NFAC talking about, and this guy's just this totally hate-filled person, just literally can't get three words without saying the F word.
Yeah.
And his plan is he wants Texas. That's their deal.
He's so smart.
The NFAC, he's like, we are not doing politics anymore. We're not going to talk about these issues. We don't want to negotiate. We want Texas. You're going to give us Texas, and then all the black people, we're all just going to go live in Texas, and y'all leave us alone. That's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to solve the issue.
So smart. He's so brave. Yeah. He's so brave for having 200 cronies with weapons standing behind him as he says this stuff, and as they harass a family in their
So
van.
they're like harassing white people on the street with I mean guns. I mean, this is, you know, you're looking at this, all these guys with guns, and I'm not talking about like little handguns. I'm talking about like AR-15s, like
No, everybody had a rifle or a shotgun in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
It wasn't like everybody just showed up with what they had in their closet.
No.
That's what's concerning to me about this situation is how do you get 200 people? Like, I mean,
well, somebody's funding this thing.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
I don't know.
ARs are expensive.
You know, like we don't know the full details of like the origins of this group, but the fact that they're out there on the street, you know, with serious weaponry confronting white people in their cars, you know, it's like you can't help but look at this and think like, okay, sooner or later blood is going to be shed
Yeah.
in one of these situations.
Yeah.
You know, and things are going to pop off, and you know, we're living in a powder keg right now.
Yeah.
And I think you know, it will only take a little bit of an incident for things to go majorly off the rails.
And that's where I guess I come to that crossroads of like even having the conversation. It's because these guys don't understand that, you know, he called out. So the guy's called the real Grandmaster. So ESPN, they had an article on it. I'm not even going to read it. ESPN's become, you know, just a branch of CNN.
Sure.
But the guy they call him the real Grandmaster. And they don't like white people. They don't like, you know, all these different groups. They don't like, you know, all this stuff. I mean, obviously a racist group. Anything about this, I think there's some things about this that very much align with the Ku Klux Klan. They're pretty much just like the opposite of the Ku Klux Klan. They're a racist black group. The guy's even called a grandmaster. You know, they're even, it's even set up like the Klan, man. Like, you know, I'm sure that they're, like, this guy's from Texas. His family's probably lived in the South for a long time. His family has faced, I'm sure, probably somewhere down the line, real racism from a group like what he's doing.
Yep.
And that's what's so frustrating to me. My thing is, and I told James this before we started, I said, all right, you can have Texas when you fight for it and you win it from the people of Texas.
Yeah.
That and I don't mean to get militant about it, but if we sit over and just lay down and let these people take this, they'll take it.
Yeah.
Now, I think it'd be a little harder to take an entire state. But I have black friends that I know ain't going to move down there to live in no black Texas. They just want to live in America. They just want to live in peace. I have good black friends. They don't care nothing about that.
Yeah.
And so this doesn't speak for all black people, just like the Ku Klux Klan
No.
doesn't speak for all white
No.
people. But this is just alarming. I don't care what color they are. It's just alarming. I'm not for armed protest.
No.
I don't care if you agree with me on every aspect. I don't agree with you getting your AR and going and standing in front of the courthouse and, you know, waving your flag and doing this. I don't agree with that because protest doesn't do anything when you have a gun. That's
Did you see? Was it Don Lemon or was it?
Oh, that guy's so smart.
Or was it Acosta or was it? Who was it? Somebody on CNN, you know, talking about all the riots, you know, and he was like, somebody show me where it says that protests are supposed to be peaceful. And I'm like, have you read the Bill of Rights? Like, it's right there in black and white. Peaceful assembly. Mm-hmm. It's not rocket science, but yeah. Anyways.
Well, and so I don't like this. I don't like if a bunch of Republicans or conservatives or whatever goes and gets together and carries their ARs downtown. I don't like that.
I don't like it either. And I was telling you this.
It just doesn't look good.
No, and the thing is, like, I feel like people are playing soldier right now. Mm-hmm. People are playing war. Like, I think people are seriously not taking the reality seriously enough.
They don't understand what we can be in the middle of.
People don't understand that, like, you do not want that, and we are so close to it. Yeah. You do not want to be living in that world. And and at this point, it's like we're getting closer and closer to the precipice every day, every week, and people are being real gung ho and cowboyish about it. And like these guys walking around the street with ARs, calling hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys.
Well, see, and my thing is, you mess with somebody's family. These dudes, they're getting emboldened. And
Yeah.
you go mess with somebody's family. We were talking about this beforehand, and he just splatters you all over the side of a building.
Yeah.
You've asked for it. Like, if you go mess with somebody and you show force with a weapon with them, not because here's the thing, they don't understand. I don't believe these people understand what a firearm is for. So, my grandfather always said about a pocket knife, he'd pull his knife out on me. I mean, this is a relationship I have with my grandfather. He'd pull his knife out and he'd hold the blade to me, point it at me.
Yeah.
And then I'd pull my knife out on him and he'd say, son, don't you pull that knife out unless you're going to use it. That's my mindset about taking a gun to a rally.
Yeah.
Is you don't, do you take your chainsaw to a rally? Do you take your socket set to a rally? Probably not, because
Yeah.
You're not there for that purpose.
Right.
If you take a gun to something like this, it better be for a reason where you're going to use it.
Right.
It's a tool. Leave it at home if you're going to go protest, and leave it in your truck if you're going to go protest it. Leave it in your car. If you're going to do this, that's fine. Right. I'm fine with it. But when you literally march down the street and you look like you're trying to be a military organization, what I don't think they understand is that they only see that as a symbol. God-fearing American citizens that legally conceal carry, legally have a firearm, and they go knocking on somebody's door or burning somebody's house down and they get shot by somebody, they're like, why'd you do that? Why would you, they don't understand.
And the thing
that
is,
this is aggressive. This is beyond aggressive.
Well, also, like, keep in mind this powder keg thing. Like, imagine how easy it would be. You see this column, 200 armed people with ARs. There's a video going around of them yelling at this white guy in his car, right? They come up with rifles. They're yelling at this white guy, like, where's my reparations, all this kind of stuff. And the guy's just kind of like, whatever, but like they were lucky that guy was pretty level-headed and was like, whatever.
I would have felt really, He played it cooler than
he played it very cool.
And I would have been scared. I'm not saying that I'd have been all like G.I. Joe or anything. I'm just saying.
No, he was very brave in what he did.
Yeah.
But like, think about how many people out there are a lot more nervous and a lot more trigger happy than that.
Yeah.
And this is America. Like, people are armed, like people are armed in their car.
That's what makes it great.
Think about that happening. They freak somebody out. Guy draws on them, shoots them.
Yeah.
Now imagine the media response.
Well, imagine the 199 other people standing there with a gun.
Now just imagine the media response if a white guy in his car shot one of these NFAC people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it would be the end of the world. It would just be media meltdown. And if that happened, they would gin up. It would be open season on white people. Mm-hmm. It would just be absolutely open season on white people. And the media would justify it and encourage it.
Because it's racist to shoot somebody that's about to kill you.
And what that means is that all white people driving around their cars are going to get real nervous anytime they see a crowd of black people. And we are not far off from a race war in this country when you see stuff like this going on in the streets. Yeah. And it's encouraged.
Terrifying. It's encouraged by the media. It's being
100%
fed by the media. I mean, and that's my thing. Like, I don't disagree with protesting. I don't disagree with doing any of those things as long as it's peaceful. And when you don't look peaceful, it's not good.
Yeah.
And so what these guys don't understand about history is that all the countries in the world, in some form or fashion, have had their own civil wars. Our country has come so far it's been 150 years. Now, they act like it was last week when all this stuff, during the Civil War and slavery and everything was going on. A lot of groups and a lot of people and the media act like we're only a week removed from, the Jim Crow days and all that stuff. We've moved away from that stuff.
Yeah.
These guys that do this stuff like this, it's not bringing anything good. It's going to cause bloodshed. Like you said, I like how this guy calls out these small militia groups like the Proud Boys and whatever they are, the 3%ers and all these other groups. He calls out the wrong people, James. I told you this. We were talking about this before we started. He called out the wrong people because those groups, they want to fight these guys.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, the Proud Boys and these groups that are like true racists. There's a lot of neo-Nazi groups out there. They would want to fight these guys.
Yeah, yeah.
They want that.
Right.
But these guys they've passed the point of making those guys mad, and they're making the American people mad, and they're making the American people scared in all forms, fashions, colors, whatever.
Right.
People, honest citizens are going to be concerned. They see somebody dressed like this, whatever color they are, they're going to be like, all right, I'm about to get shot by these guys. This militant group's about to shoot me. And they're just going to take the law into their own hands. And that's what's scary. That's what, you know, I don't want it to happen. Like I said, these groups, Proud Boys and all these true groups that are very much that super, super radical right-wing guys, they want this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. But I'm not going to back down to somebody like trying to harm my family.
Right.
And then what's the fallout of this? And so they don't understand what civil war brings. And it brings death, it brings destruction, it brings sadness.
Right.
There's really not a reason for it right now.
Yeah.
Give me a good reason why we need to be doing this. Like I mean, it just proves that they were just waiting on something to happen that can enable them to go out here and make these choices. They don't understand history. They don't understand why this isn't a good idea.
Well, you know that they don't understand what really the stakes are because when these 300 guys, armed guys, were marching around, there were like kids in the crowd. There were like little teenage boys marching with them. There was a family marching with them. I'm like, you people do not understand. You know, when the you know what hits the fan, like that is grossly negligent and irresponsible.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, what are you doing? What do you think? What do you think? War is like. What do you think is going to happen if there's actually armed confrontation? What do you think is going to happen if you run up on the National Guard and a shot goes off, and all of a sudden, lots of shots are going off. A lot of people are going to die, and you got kids with you. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy. And I think, and that's what I think. A lot of people are in that mentality right now, where a lot of people are kind of like a little bit gung ho about a civil war, but not really thinking through the actual real life consequences of what that's actually going to look like in your day to day life. You don't want that, but I mean, it really is getting to a point where it's hard to see a way out of this with this situation where one of these two systems is going to have to be destroyed. It's hard to see the way clear of this, you know, like because that radical left, it's not going away. You know, it's not going away. Even if Donald Trump's reelected and the Republicans take the Senate and all this stuff, like it's not going away.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going away.
That could be the catalyst.
That could just make it worse,
this.
you know, and certainly if the opposite, I mean, if Biden gets in, these people are just going to run the show, and it's just they're going to implement their agenda. They're just going to roll it out and just steamroll the American people. So I just don't know the way forward.
So thinking about the, you know, like you've said a few times about the one side has to be destroyed. I think the special thing about the Christian side is that, you know, it can't be destroyed. It can't be dismantled. I mean, there's no way that can happen because of, even though we may face hard times, we may face persecution. We may be in an underground church. We may have to, you know, we may not be able to have services like what we have because of this radical movement. But it's impossible to dismantle that. At the point that it's completely gone is when it's Woody's last roundup and God's wrapping things up, you know. And then dismantling America as it is, America's more of a mindset than it is even borders and states and anything. The flag could fly. I mean, all the patriots could have to move to some remote islands.
We're going to the moon. There's already a flag up there.
Yeah, there's already a flag. There's a Confederate flag on the other side, so you might want to protest. I'm just kidding. But anyway, the American mindset is a hard thing to remove because there's a huge silent majority that's out there that, you know, when they feel threatened, that's the most dangerous thing about the American people, is that it's kind of like a snake. like a rattlesnake. There's a reason that the Gadsden flag had a rattlesnake on it.
Yeah.
Is that until you corner a rattlesnake, you can even poke one. I wouldn't advise it. You can poke one with a stick, and he knows, like, you're putting a barrier between you and him.
Yeah.
When you get close enough to him, he'll bite you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them that they're strong enough they can bite you and knock you down. That's how strong their bite is.
Right.
And you take American people, God-fearing American people, and you back them. We're already in a corner. We already feel cornered. I feel cornered. I don't know about you, but I feel cornered. I feel like that this NFAC movement is a greater threat than coronavirus ever was. This socialist movement, Marxist movement, it's a greater threat than coronavirus ever has been.
100%.
I feel in a corner. I feel like I'm in a corner. And there's a lot of people like us that feel the same way. And there's people out there that they're just going to quit putting up with it. And that's what's dangerous, is that when you put somebody in a corner, they don't have any training. They don't have any, I'm not a soldier. The majority of our society is not military law enforcement trained.
Right.
But if you scare somebody and make them feel like their family's threatened, that's the motivation for the American people.
Yeah.
When you start threatening their families, they'll do things that they didn't realize they could do.
Well,
that's what's dangerous.
It's like this last week I was saying that, I can't remember where this was, Minnesota thing, maybe, or I don't remember where it was, but white couple getting yelled at by these two black ladies in a grocery store parking lot. This thing's going on and on. These black ladies are yelling at this woman, yelling. And she's like, this white lady's she's like, ma'am, I don't hate you. I'm not a racist. I don't hate black people. I didn't mean any disrespect to you, blah, blah. Yelling. Finally, the situation just deteriorates. And then finally, like, this woman and her husband, they get in their car. They're trying to leave the situation. But I guess these ladies that are screaming at her are like, get behind the car, so they can't move the car. And this thing escalates. Eventually, this white lady draws a gun on these two.
Right.
And I'm like, this is exactly what you're saying. Like, I don't know that would have, if she would have gone to that point 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Yeah. But day after day, this white lady is watching the news every day, seeing cities burned down by Black Lives Matter, seeing people shot in the streets, seeing all this stuff. Like, she's getting nervous. So when she's confronted by two black ladies in the parking lot who are yelling and screaming at her about being racist, she's thinking about the possible violent implications of it.
Right. Right.
And that
she's backed in a corner.
And totally. And so so it is like, this whole thing is heating up, and eventually I just feel like eventually shots are going to go off in a way that's
what's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we're so blessed, but yet we're right here on the cusp of literally having to fight this thing out.
Yeah. And really for nothing.
Yeah. And this may sound crazy to people listening to it, but please just understand that we're not advocating that. I'm not advocating that. James is not advocating that.
That's the point. It's like I'm
against it.
I don't want to hot up the thing. I want to cool it down, but like, people need to be aware of, like, people need to watch their rhetoric. People need to watch themselves, because people just need to be cautious, because we're really close to violent armed conflicts in this country. Over this stuff.
What it does is it's when these people, when they get their feet off of public property and they start getting out into communities where people live, that's what sparks that fire.
For sure.
If they're playing it smart and they're really not wanting that, if they don't want that, they need to stay where they're at.
Yeah.
On public properties, and that's not just the NFAC and the black people. It's everybody. All of these people. There's a lot of white people out there burning stuff down right now. Shame on you. You're just as bad as these militant groups out here of black people calling people out for violence. You're just as bad. I don't care what color you are. If you're trying to incite violence, you're a piece of dirt.
Yeah.
And with as much peace and happiness as we have in our country, Iran and China and Russia's watching this, and we are literally opening up the door for World War III. I mean, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we've talked about this, James. These countries out there, they're loving what's going on.
Oh, they love it.
If they can see us dismantle ourselves, we will be knee deep. Which, hey, I mean, I hope the Lord just comes back and we'll be all right.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about my kids growing up through this. You've got kids to think about growing up through this. I mean, we're passing down something that's not worth having right now.
Yeah.
And we're losing sight of, the history of our nation. And that's what a lot of this goes back to. So that takes us on to the next thought of the Deshaun Jackson issue, the football player for the Philadelphia Eagles. And so the NFAC, they don't understand what civil war looks like. They don't understand what armed conflict looks like. I've not been in combat, so I can't tell you that I do. But I will tell you that if I feel threatened and I feel the need to, I will defend myself.
Yep.
And that's what's scary, because there's a lot of people like me and there's a lot of people like you, James, that feel that way. Now, that's in essence, not understanding the history of the world and understanding that civil wars are never good. It's never good for you to fight with people that are your neighbors. Deshaun Jackson, so smart. I actually used to be a fan of his, but no longer. I'm just done with the NFL completely. But anyway, Deshaun Jackson shares on his Instagram page a quote from Adolf Hitler. Not a lot of people quote Adolf Hitler.
Well, to be even more specific, a quote attributed to Adolf Hitler.
Right.
And
he quoted Hitler saying, "White Jews will blackmail America and they'll extort America. Their plan for world domination won't work if the Negroes know who they are. The white citizens of America will be terrified to know that all the time they've been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the children of Israel." So basically what Hitler hates Jews. So like he's doing everything he can to, I mean, isn't it crazy we have to say that? Like,
Yeah.
Hey, Deshaun Jackson, I hope he's listening to this. Hey, Deshaun Jackson, Hitler didn't like Jews. He also didn't like black people.
Oh, yeah.
And once he got done killing all the Jews, the black people were next.
Yeah.
Because had he successfully taken over the East Coast of America, there's a lot of black folks that live in the Southeast, especially in the 40s, in America. Do you see where I'm going, James? Do you see that? Like,
Oh, yeah.
That's what would have happened. Once he got done with the Jews, the black people were the next people on his list, and the Hispanics and Asian. I mean, he returned on Japan. I mean, he hates anybody that's not like the ideal white. Like, I'm too dark for him.
Oh, yeah.
And Deshaun Jackson, no, is that his name? Yeah, Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
He literally quotes him. What in the world? Like, who?
Yeah, quoting Hitler, that usually doesn't go down very well. I mean, historically, that's not a great look.
Some of the owners of the Eagles are Jews. I'm not kidding.
Well, you know who else are Jews? A lot of NFL fans.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know he's he thinks what he's doing is empowering black people by saying that. He thinks he's empowering the black identity somehow.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, no, you're not. You're not. If you need to go to Hitler to get your self-esteem,
That's pretty bad.
you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, my friend.
Yeah.
You need to look around.
Well, so this so this proves the Bible is so true. The Jews have had they've been discriminated against forever.
Oh yeah.
Some of it was brought upon themselves in the history of Israel. Some of it they brought upon themselves because they would turn away from God and then they would end up in a mess. But it doesn't justify killing 12 million of them just for whatever reason. I mean, Hitler had convinced himself that they were the reason for everybody's troubles. I don't understand why. Anybody that understands history, anybody that knows anybody with a pair of ears and half a brain knows who Adolf Hitler is and what he did. I mean, he supersedes World War II. You can mention his name, and it pushes everything else to the side. All the battles, all the casualties, all the he's a big figure in our world history, not in a good way. And to quote him is is insane.
Well,
I mean, you would think that someone like a social justice activist would find some kind of relation with the Jews, because African Americans went through enslavement like the Jews had in their history, went through, being treated terribly like the Jews had in their history.
Right.
I mean, if you're true social justice, like if you're true blue and that's what you believe in, why wouldn't you find an identity with those people rather than seeking to suppress them of something that has been gone 75 years?
Because I'll tell you why. It goes down to the very core of the issue. It goes down to the very heart of the spirit of the whole thing, which is that, and again, you talk about an understanding of history. I mean, Hitler, everybody says, oh, Hitler's bad. Hitler's terrible. Why? Why is Hitler so terrible? Oh, well, he killed a bunch of Jews. He killed the Jews. He hated the Jews, blah, blah. Well, okay, that's kind of it, but take it down to its fundamental root. Why was Hitler so bad? Hitler's whole failure, his whole moral failure was that, and this is like, there's good things you can say about Hitler's economic policies all day long. It was pretty amazing how he turned Germany around when he came into power. But none of that mattered.
Yeah.
Because at the root of it, in his core of his being, in the depth of his spirit, the mistake he made was that he blamed. He did not take ownership of Germany's problems. He did not say, okay, we've gotten ourselves into this mess. We've got to get out of it.
Yeah.
He did not fundamentally say that. What he fundamentally said was, we're in this mess. It's that person's fault. It's that group's fault. We've got to get rid of them. Right. It's blame. Blame was Hitler's. That's why he's so evil, because in his depth of being, he blamed instead of owning. And that is exactly the case with Marx. That is exactly the case with all communist movements that we've ever seen in the 20th century. Why they're all so evil, because and this is what communists used to do. They used to go to, like in China, they'd go to the village, right? When the Communist Party was starting to take over, they'd go to the village and they'd say, hey, you village guy, fisherman, why you guys are so poor here? Why are you so poor? And the villagers would say, well, we don't work that hard, and maybe we drink too much, and I don't know. The communists would say, no, see that guy over there? It's his fault. He's been oppressing you.
Right.
And we're here to help you take your stuff back from that guy. Blame. It comes down to blame. It comes down to a fundamental spiritual worldview of, are you going to blame? And that's how you're going to try to seek to better yourself? Or are you going to own up and take ownership yourself? And that's at the core of this battle we're seeing right now between the Christian constitutional American worldview and the Marxist, atheist, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, far left radical Democrat worldview, because their worldview is about blame. It's the same thing at the core of Hitler. It's about, oh, we have these problems. It's that person's fault. It's that group's fault. Yeah. We've got to destroy them and take our stuff back from them. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Christian worldview, the constitutional worldview, the American worldview is about you get right with yourself. You take the beam out of your own eye. You build your own property. You make your own way. You take responsibility. And those are the two. That's really what it comes down to. It's not about right and left. I mean, it is, because those things are expressed in the right and left, but it's not about this group and that group. It's about this core issue. And that's why these people find resonance with Hitler. Yeah. Because they feel deep down, they feel the same way. They feel blame. They want to blame, and that's how they're going to move forward.
Yeah. Well, and we're eventually going to hopefully be able to do a socialist, communist, Marxist episode, like a full-blown thing. But in just that was wonderful the way you explained that. Because
thank you.
You're very welcome. China, for example, there's a root group of people, and we see it today, and they actually just voted. Did you hear the news about their vote in China?
No.
I'm very excited for them because, I mean, I grew up like everything was made in China. By the time I come along, generally there was a lot of stuff made in China.
Yep.
They voted to have a democratic election. I believe it was what it was specifically. Let me see. Anyway, so like China was greatly oppressed by Japan. and Japan they were that power. They were the Nazis of the East. Ever since World War II, there has been a group of people that have looked at America and been like, "That's what we want to be like."
Yeah.
Like we're people's big brothers. Like people look up to us like, I want to be like them. And the coronavirus, the Kung Flu virus, got started. I think as they had all the riots in the streets, they had these marches. They painted them as riots. They weren't as bad as what we're seeing in our country.
Yeah.
But anyway, what you've seen over there is about the time COVID hit over there really heavily, is I think due to them wanting to be like America. And you've got this power in China, the communist power, that is trying to do everything they can to get away from being like America. They're trying to continue that blame game, because what the blame game does is it allows somebody to stay in power. Look at Korea.
Yeah.
North Korea, South Korea. North Korea blamed South Korea. They were killing citizens. I mean, there were more citizen casualties, I think I read somewhere, in the Korean War than any other war in the 20th century. I mean, it was brutal. It was communist.
Yep.
So you take the Cold War, there's a lot of atrocities going on during the Cold War era. Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, let's blame this group of Vietnamese. And that's why that got started. It's communism. It continues on. Look at, West Germany in the 80s? Was that a communist?
East was communist.
East was communist. So you got yet another communist issue. But and you've got three different names: Marxism, socialism, communism. They're all really very similar. But the Nazi Party is literally called the Nazi Socialist Workers' Party. It's a socialist mindset. It's blame game. It's give, right. Make people feel like they've got something. Point the finger towards somebody that's not this group. Have a bad guy. And essentially we are brought up in some extent in that kind of mind. Everybody is. Like, when I was a kid, you had cowboys and Indians, and you had good guy, you'd have army men and bad guys, and you'd have, cops and robbers, and you'd have, and then I got a little older especially, and you got the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Those are kind of the polarizing bad guys. And that's what we're seeing, except conservatives are the ones that are being painted as the bad guys.
Yeah.
And the Deshaun Jackson situation is the beginning of idolizing bad people and being accepted like that. Because 6 months ago, if somebody would have quoted Hitler, they'd have been like, here's a ticket to go live somewhere else.
Right.
Even an NFL team. But right now, I think they're afraid of being called a racist for firing him. I'll just be honest with you. I just think, all right, well, this black dude quoted Hitler, but because all that's going on in the world, we can't really discipline him. They find him.
He's on the right side politically. There's a double standard right now where if you're on the right side politically, you can kind of say what you want.
Right.
And the gatekeepers won't come crack down on you.
Yeah. And so you see this mindset of the communist mindset, the socialist mindset over history, and it is the blame game. It is that mindset. So what we see is we're starting to idolize right now. Adolf Hitler is not. Obviously he values what he said. If he's going to quote him, I've heard stories of World War II vets that beat bikers up because it was cool. It used to be cool for bikers to wear the old Nazi war helmets, surplus helmets. Yeah. And I've heard stories of former World War II military beating up bikers at gas stations because they were wearing those helmets.
Yep.
And it's that's how serious we took it. We didn't like Adolf Hitler. We didn't like the Nazis. And now it's somewhat acceptable. Now I've heard a few NFL players step out and say he's not getting burned enough for this. But I heard more people step up against Drew Brees than they did Deshaun Jackson.
Oh, yeah. He did, Deshaun Jackson, is that his name? I keep forgetting his name.
Deshaun Jackson.
Deshaun Jackson. He did.
I'm trying to forget
He
his
did
name.
issue an apology. Obviously some pressure was put on him to be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that thing about Hitler. But compare that to Drew Brees. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Drew Brees the hammer fell on him hard. Mm-hmm. And so many people who have just had their whole careers ruined over this kind of stuff. And all he said was basically nothing. He was just America's great,
I can't find the note on China. We'll have to maybe pull that back up. But our head comrade, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York, she there was just a post that says, AOC suggests New York City crime surge due to unemployment. Residents who need to shoplift some bread. And so here's what's, this goes back to that mindset. This goes back to Hitler and his kind of thing. Even though she didn't necessarily point the finger, there's been this push of like, eventually they're going to blame Donald. Yeah. I mean, they're already blaming Donald Trump for unemployment. But she says that it's okay for people to go steal to feed their family because they're unemployed. Now, I get it. Like, you may get to that point position. But doesn't this just add on to the narrative of the socialist communist mindset of like continuing to blame somebody? Like, she didn't say Donald Trump caused this. And I know this is completely off topic. But she just says, she suggested that New York City crime surge is due to unemployment. Isn't she part of the group that is all for everybody being shut down?
Well, what's funny is that she has cost New York City so many jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the thing with Amazon?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing of like, I mean, yeah, essentially what she's getting at in a roundabout way is like, oh, yeah, like crime's going up because people don't have enough food. If only the government would step up and provide everybody with their food. If only the government, that's where all this goes to, you know, it's like, if only the government would come in and just give everybody the things they need. When in reality, like a private company wanting to operate in your city who's going to create jobs, that's what you need, you know? But of course, like, that's not what they want. They want state power. And it is a blame game. But it's, you know, this whole thing goes down to a fundamental difference between, you know, what AOC is the what am I trying to say? What she's advocating for and what she represents is mama. She's mama. It's not your fault, honey. It's not your fault. It's their fault. Don't you? It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll provide for you. You know, that's what the whole blame game comes from. It's like a mama mentality.
Yeah.
It's like someone who has not achieved any kind of maturity in their life, and because they're used to mama just telling them, "No, it's okay. It's not your fault. Right. We're gonna provide for you. You don't have to." Versus the father mentality, which is, no, you need to get your act together. You need to own up to your mistakes. You need to focus on yourself.
Yeah.
Stop blaming other people for your problems. That's fundamentally that's what we're really coming down to with these things. Like Marx hated his father. Okay? You know, like Marxism is a mama. It's a mama thing. You know, right. It's about just we're just gonna take care of everybody, and you know, it's just like get rid of the whole father principle. Mm-hmm. Whereas the classic American way is the way of the father. It's, you know, you focus on yourself. You build yourself. Don't ask for handouts. Don't have some pride in your own character and make it work for yourself. Don't blame other people for your problems. Mm-hmm. And these are like the two mentalities that are really coming to war with each other right now. And
that's so true. So I know that was completely off topic what we were going towards, but I figured you would have some good insight like that about that, because so that takes us back to Deshaun Jackson of, you've got this group of people coming in and they are offering that coddling, that petting.
Yep.
They want kids to rebel against the system. They want kids to rebel against their parents, but they want the kids to listen to them when they speak.
Oh yeah.
Deshaun Jackson actually supposed to meet or was meeting with a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor. And I'm like, that's what, you know, that was probably the most impressive thing I've seen, because I think the people that deface the World War II memorial and the Vietnam memorial, they need to go talk to people who lived through that combat. So I appreciate him, because he could have just kind of buckled down on it and just said, you know, I'm sorry, and just went on. But this mindset of like, well, you know, you can just say whatever, especially if you get into a position of, you know, prestige or power, like AOC or even Deshaun Jackson. I mean, as a wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, that's a position of power. And he's probably fired up. He's probably, you know, I get it. Like, he's probably still like trying to figure out things with, you know, with the George Floyd deal and all that stuff, and trying to figure out what to do. Hey, I get that. But a lot of these guys in the NFL, they're not that smart as far as social stuff.
Yep.
They don't understand. I mean, white guys, black guys, whatever, they got through college because they could play ball, a lot of them. Now, there's some of them that have gotten through school because of, you know, and succeeded in school. But especially that generation that he's in, that group of guys, there were a lot of them that they just made it because they could play. And I don't know if there's a lack of his own understanding or a lack of his caring, but, you know, that's what I wanted to bring up is saying something like, quoting Adolf Hitler and saying that, blaming Donald Trump for the joblessness in America. You know, to me, those are two very different things. And I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess my biggest point I want to make is like, this is very, very far past. I expect people to blame Donald Trump for the unemployment rate in New York City, even if you are the goofball that advocated everything to shut down.
Yeah.
And I understand. Now New York City, I can understand why they did what they did at first, but this is beyond. Quoting Adolf Hitler's beyond. and I guess that's my point, is like understanding the history for the NFAC crowd, understanding history of Civil Wars. They don't do anything besides bring pain.
Understanding the history of communism. It's not like we've not tried this before, people.
Yeah.
Like, it's gone so bad every time. Mm-hmm. It's there. You can just read the book. It's like, it's not rocket science.
And places that, you know, this mindset has succeeded. And I know this is like jumping back and forth between these conversations, but the communist thing, understanding the history of communism, there's countries it's succeeded in. A lot of the Asian countries. Vietnam's been a communist country since near the end of the war. When the U.S. withdrew, they changed the name of Saigon to Ho Chi Minh City. He was not a good guy. Like, they honor him. China is communist. The people there are not free. I guess my biggest thing with NFAC deal and Deshaun Jackson thing is we could all be chained up together without regard to our color, just because we're Americans. There are people out there that hate us just because we're Americans. A lot of them are communists. But you go to the Middle East, look at the radical Muslim groups. They'll shoot a black Marine just like they'll shoot a white Marine or an Asian Marine. They hate America. They don't care. They'll torture you on TV, cut your head off, and send your fingers to your family at home in the mail, first class. They don't care. And that's black, white, green, yellow. These people, Deshaun Jackson and Grand Wizard Tom or whatever his name was with NFAC, if they only could see, and I'm not saying I have saw, but I'm smart enough to know that this crap doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
And if they were smart enough to see what that system accomplishes, like I said, Hitler, it wouldn't have been, he was trying to stir issues in America by making the statements or that sentiment, that mindset.
Yeah.
That's what it is. He wanted to get as many people on board with him as he could. Because he knew if he could get a country like America against the Jews, he could succeed at his plan. He knew that America was I mean, people didn't take America seriously at the start of the war, but he knew eventually we would get on track. What we did do, true racism, is we put the Japanese in internment camps.
Oh, yeah.
And we wouldn't let black men fight alongside white men on the front lines during the World War II. And when they were allowed, they were busted down to private sergeants and lieutenants and whatever. I think probably lieutenant, maybe not even lieutenant, but whatever highest class an enlisted man can be, were busted down to private to fight with white men. That's wrong.
Yeah.
That's true racism. And to want to fight, to be an armed black militia wanting to fight white people so you can get reparations, or being Deshaun Jackson and quoting Adolf Hitler, just proves that there's a very, very deep lack of understanding of history.
There is, but let me ask you this, because what I see, I mean, from where I sit and I look at all this stuff going on, I think these people don't want to know history.
No, they don't care.
It's not about, and that's why I keep thinking, I think we've gone beyond the point of rational argumentation. And this is something I saw when all that Chaz stuff started going down and all those protests because, in 2016, there were all these protests and there was all these man on the street videos from conservative podcast people trying to interview people, trying to have a debate about these political issues.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And people would try to debate, and often maybe not be good at it, or, and then you'd get a really funny clip of somebody saying something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then fast forward to just a few weeks ago when the Chaz thing was going on, when those protests were going on, I saw a man on the street type video from a conservative outlet, and the tone has totally changed. Nobody was willing to slow down and have a conversation and try to have a debate. These people have gone way beyond that.
Yeah.
They're not interested anymore. It's like the NFAC guy saying, he's like, we're not interested in politics anymore. He's like, I'm not going to have a debate. We're not going to talk about this. Y'all are just going to give us Texas, and that's how it's going to go. Otherwise, we're going to, have a race war. I think we've gone beyond that point where it's time for, rational discussion, because people don't want to know.
Right.
They don't want to know the history. They don't want to know the arguments. They don't want to know. They've gone into a depth of a spiritual darkness where they're not going to let go of that. And that's what's so dangerous, I think, right now. And that's, to me, it's like, I want to be prepared for that, because I'll tell people what I think, and I'll try to have conversations with people, but I don't think at this point people are going to be convinced anymore by just rational explanations.
And that's another part of being cornered.
Yeah, that's what, right. Yeah.
It's another aspect of, because honestly, if I like the man on the street stuff, I guess we could go do that, but I think I see clearly that these people are past the point of talking. So they never talk to begin with. That's the thing. The Grand Wizard Tom was able to say, we want Texas. We're past politics. Dude, I didn't hear your name till last week. When were you involved in politics? When were you out there trying to advocate for black communities to get better funding and get certain things and get benefits and get, when were you out there doing that? Because I haven't seen that. And it may have happened, but I don't think it did. Mm-hmm. People don't get to those points and making those demands out of a rational mindset. They just want what they want, and they'll ask for it directly or demand it directly. And so my thing is, and I know I say that a lot, but I guess my mindset about this is that it comes back to, we could tie this in. This could be our 2A time.
Yeah, let's do 2A time.
Let's do 2A time.
All right.
We're at that point.
Okay.
Situational awareness is key when concealing a firearm, carrying a firearm, being at home, even being at home today is important. Now, where I live, I know a lot of people who live around me, but it doesn't mean someone wouldn't bother me at home or mess with me at home. The key to successfully carrying your firearm is only having to use it when you've been left no other choice.
Right.
When you've been cornered to the point where you have to strike, you have to defend yourself, you have to defend your family.
Right.
You will save yourself a lot of trouble. You'll save yourself a lot of money. You'll save yourself jail time, all kinds of other stuff. There are more benefits to not using your firearm than there are to using your firearm.
Yeah.
A lot of this is not putting yourself in a situation that is dangerous.
Absolutely.
And that's why I really could care less about going out and talking to people and trying to have these conversations, because these people have not shown themselves to me to be rational people that want to have conversations, that want to have constructive conversations.
And you're putting yourself in danger. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen the violence. Like, you know, today they're painting a Black Lives Matter mural in downtown where we live. And I'm just thinking, like, I'm not going down there.
No.
I mean, you know, it's kind of, there's some historical interest in it. There's some, well, let's see what these people are all about. But like, I'm not going to go down there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just not worth the risk. And this is what I was saying about this. It's so counterproductive, all this violent stuff, because like you're making white people scared.
Yeah.
Because you're violent. It's not because white people are racist. It's because we're all seeing all this violence going on and we're all starting to get nervous about it. So like, yeah, if I'm in my car and I see a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters, I'm going to turn around and go the other way.
Right.
You know, like because I know that it's possible for violence to happen.
Mm-hmm. And that's responsible gun ownership, of getting yourself and that firearm out of that situation.
Yeah.
Because it should be, I mean, in North Carolina, I mean, our state laws allow, we've got castle doctrine. Somebody starts to bust your window open and you shoot them, you've done right. If they break into your car, you shoot them, you're fine. As long as it's, I mean, there's so much more to go along with it. But like, you've got castle doctrine where, you know, if someone tries to break in your home and you shoot them, that's fine. Like, there's a lot of other stuff. I'm not legal counsel, but you know, like in the basic understanding, you're protected to use your firearm in your home and in your car. But if you can avoid it, you should.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And that's what makes this issue so dangerous, is that people are going to avoid it to the point where they can't, and then that's when damage happens. That's when people get killed. Even in our downtown location where we live, our downtown area, there was a guy, I don't know if he intentionally drove down the street or whatever. I don't expect to get stopped by protesters driving down the street.
Right.
I don't think I should. I pay taxes to pave these roads just like anybody else. And if you're dumb enough
They
to
don't
stand
care.
in front of me,
They don't care about that.
They probably don't. They don't add to society. So the guy's driving. He's in a pickup truck. He's trying to pull out, and they're blocking him. They're standing in front of him. Just like then he pulls up, like revs the engine, and it kind of bumps the person in front of his truck. And somebody starts just absolutely hammering on the window of his truck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this dude has every right to defend himself. And he didn't. Thankfully, he waited and got some people out of the way, kind of very aggressively kept pulling up. That's what we were talking about before we started our podcast today, is use a different weapon.
Yeah.
If you can use your vehicle, use your vehicle. If you get trapped with protesters, you are facing less charges, less issues, less, legal battle with a vehicle as a weapon than you would a firearm. Now, if you get to that position where you have to use your firearm, you do. But that guy, had he freaked out, and this is what we're seeing, is like that was very early on in all this.
Yeah. Had
he freaked out and started shooting, who in that crowd has a gun? Right. Then you've got crossfire. Then you've got, casualties, just bystanders in the crossfire. And it's something that shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't be out there doing that. But as responsible gun owners, we should do everything we can. I'm not saying to cower down and not go out anywhere, but I'm not going to even go down to our downtown area. I don't anyway. I don't like it. I'm just a redneck from the woods.
But that brings up a good issue about gun ownership, is like, it's not enough that we all have guns.
Yeah.
Right. Because a gun in the hand of someone who's nervous and, got an itchy trigger finger or is all ginned up about the news or whatever, like That's not what we want.
No.
That's not what we're advocating for.
Yeah.
We want a society of people who are armed but trained, who have real training, first in terms of situational awareness before anything else, and is really dedicated to avoiding confrontation, avoiding the fight.
Yeah.
But also people that are not going to be nervous if they do encounter those situations.
Right.
To have some kind of training to be able to remain calm in heated situations. That is extremely important.
Right.
We don't want a bunch of nervous gun owners out there.
No, and so you've got all these new gun owners.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a notary, and I've notarized probably 5 or 6 gun permits since this got started, and it does kind of make me nervous because it's like, man, these people. A lot of them, I talk to them, they're very honest. They don't have a training.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy who was a firearm instructor, and he said he had somebody. It was like end of last year. This is the people's mindset. Came to him and they were starting to shoot. He was talking her through the, through how the gun fired, the mechanisms, the action. It was a shotgun, over and under shotgun. And he was walking her through, how to fire it, how to load it, how to eject the shells. And he said, have you ever fired a gun before? And she's like, oh, yeah. And they kept talking for a few minutes. And he's like, what kind of gun have you fired? And this is what the man told me. If anybody was lying, it was him, and I don't think he was. The woman told him, she's like, well, I fired a Super Soaker. I'm not kidding.
Hey, did you see the footage of all those guys attacking the cop with Super Soakers in Atlanta?
No.
Super Soakers can be deadly. That was crazy.
Maybe this woman was using a deadly
Maybe
Super
she
Soaker.
used a deadly Super. I'm sorry for the diversion.
No.
But go. I encourage everybody to check out, Google this clip of about, 30 or 50 black guys with Super Soakers attacking police officers in their car. And the cop was having a rough time because you put a bunch of Super Soakers together.
I understand 30.
That is like
This
no
woman,
joke.
This woman considered firing a Super Soaker at her grandson at a birthday party to be the same as shooting an over and under 12 gauge shotgun.
That's crazy, and that's dangerous, and that's
and so that's the thing.
Yeah,
These are
yeah.
the people owning firearms, and
Yeah.
if you're because you're going to be victimized. I feel like if we're getting to that point, if you're conservative, if you're conservative, if you got a Trump sticker on your car, or any kind of flag, you're gonna eventually going to be very persecuted for that. White men. We've taken the blame for a lot of stuff. It's eventually going to get to the point where people are just going to get violent when they see us. They get triggered because we're white men. We have all this privilege. Got bags under our eyes from working late hours and everything else, and we're so privileged.
it is.
But,
it is. We are kind of getting to that point of it being open season on white people in
and
public.
Christians, white people in general.
Yeah.
Women, children. They don't. These people, these crazy radical people, they don't have any limitations. So what does situational awareness look like really quickly before we wrap up? I would say it would be very important for people, if you're driving, slow down a little bit because taking that exit off that interstate and taking that short way home as fast as you can, trying to get home, it can turn into protester-ridden mess.
Yeah.
Some of these people in their vehicles, they've asked for this craziness because they've chosen to drive down streets and roads where they know protesters are.
Yeah.
Listen to your local news. Try to keep up with what's going on. Check Facebook. Utilize these things we have out there and try to stay away from these people.
If they're painting a Black Lives Matter mural downtown, stay away from
Don't
downtown.
drive down Main Street with your Confederate flag flying over your 86 Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Don't put yourselves in those situations. I was walking into Home Depot. Might have told the story on here before, but I was walking into Home Depot and somebody screamed at me, "Put your mask on," like literally as loud as they possibly can be.
Yeah.
People are shaming people for not wearing a mask in public. Just understand that people are crazy. Start watching the interactions.
Yeah.
I'm not law enforcement, military, nothing, but I've been trying to enrich myself with training and understanding about these things. Just start when you go to the grocery store, when you're at work, whatever you're doing, start watching people around you.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what they're doing and train yourself with people, maybe even people you know. Just watch what they're doing and try to keep track in your mind. What am I seeing around me? Who's walking in the door? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? Who's, been gone, in this certain room too long, or who's looking at me weird? You don't have to overthink it, but start watching what people are doing around you, because that's another thing. If you don't wear a mask out in public, people are going to get violent eventually towards those people.
Yeah.
And so situational awareness just looks like slowing down, utilize our technology we have, the news, Facebook, whatever it may be, and watch what's going on around you.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And even if, to work up to the point where you're like casing people around you in public, you can really just practice the art of paying attention. So when you're in public, first of all, put your phone away. Don't be on your phone unless your phone rings. If you're in public, just start to try to notice details. Like if you walk in a building, just, even if you're not to the point where you're casing people out, just practice noticing things. If you're in a grocery store, practice, notice how many aisles are there in this grocery store? Where are the doors in this grocery store?
Yeah.
What color are the walls? You know what I mean? Just like little insignificant things, but just practice the art of paying attention to where you are. Open up your eyes, get off a smartphone.
Yeah.
And then, look at people. And you don't have to be like, get all paranoid. Be like, oh, is this guy going to start something?
Right.
How many of these people are armed? That's a game I play now in public. Yeah. I'm like, who's carrying right now?
Don't turn it, and it would surprise you. Somebody's grandma's got a 410 shotgun sawed off in her purse. That's the thing. You don't have to be, Delta Force Chuck Norris.
Absolutely. But if you practice just paying attention, if there is something weird and there is something unusual going on, you're more likely to notice it without having to make too great of an effort, because you're used to tuning into your environment instead of tuning into your phone or just being in your head.
Yeah. See, and that's what I've learned the most about tuning into the environment. Mm-hmm. What I've learned most is that everybody's distracted.
Yeah, it's so
easier.
true.
It's easier to read people when you get used to tuning into the environment. That's a great way of explaining it. You go into a store, and because I just like to know what's going on. When something goes down, I might not be the one in the middle of it, but I might be able to help the police or help identify somebody or something.
Yeah.
You see an accident happen. I've learned every time I go to Florida, I see an accident happen. Yeah. I need to stop going there. Every time I'm like nearly hit head on, and we get out and are like, oh man, I'm glad we survived this, and didn't get hit on. But I'm standing there and I'm like, I'm trying to pay attention to stuff because I may be answering questions for highway patrol. But as I've started doing that, put the phone away. Go into a grocery store, for instance, and you'll see people shopping, and you can tell they're shopping because the only thing they do is they look at their shopping list and then they look at the products and make sure they're not running some kid over that they can't see over the buggy. And those people, you really don't have to worry about those people because they're not paying attention. You train yourself to really realize these people aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
This kid walking through on a cell phone, he's not paying attention. He's, and you're identifying and you're slimming down what might be a threat to you.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we have to be all paranoid, but it's just training yourself to do this. It's these people that you start noticing little nervous ticks and things that they're doing. Yeah. And then before you know it, they're holding up the store and you're like, oh my gosh, I saw that. I saw this leading up to that. And then maybe you've caught a tattoo or, something crazy about them that you can help, give to the police to identify, or maybe that person goes to draw a gun on the cashier and you, as a concealed carry holder, can prevent them from robbing the store. That's not our job, but maybe more than prevent them from robbing the store, but prevent them from harming someone. Yeah. And that's what it comes back to. That's the reason we have our concealed carry. That's the reason the Second Amendment is out there, is to protect ourselves and those around us. Good people. Yeah. That's what it's for.
Well said.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, I think we've said about enough. We're about an hour and 45 into this thing.
It's getting longer.
So, yeah.
Sorry.
So just to recap, watch out for the NFAC. Don't go looking for a fight.
They're not kidding around.
They really are not. They're not. And, everybody be careful out there. People are crazy right now. Don't go looking for a fight. We don't need cowboys out there. We need people to just keep their eyes on themselves. Focus on your own life. Focus on your own self, your own family. Don't play the blame game, because if you do, you're going to fall into the same ditch that all these other
You're
people
going to
have
be a
fallen
commie.
into.
If you play the blame game, you'll be a
You
commie.
will end up there, and you don't want to end up there. All right, thank you for listening to the Liberty Bell. We believe that only the spiritual strength of men can restore America. We are pro-gun, pro-cop, pro-military, pro-sanity, pro-Christian, pro-America, pro-Constitution. Thank you for listening.